whenever you're done, so the battery doesn't die since it's been used this morning. Well, okay, it's even off. It's on. So you only switch it on.
Colleagues, good afternoon. We're happy to lead a discussion with professionals here. Matters safety of journalists ahead of the 2022 election. Obviously, a lot has been done and will be done. And our experience has been there, reports have been done. CPJ, that's the Committee to Report, Committee for Protection of Journalists, released a report yesterday. The numbers even globally are not good. Too many journalists in cells, killed, facing arrests, closures, attacks on media houses. It's a global trend. In fact, in Kenya, what we have done, the Reporters Without Borders, which is done in France, has seen our state of journalism and safety of journalists going down. For the last 4 years, we have been going down. In fact, Ethiopia is being rated to have a safe working environment for journalists than Kenya. So we are at, I think, 102. We were number 92, then we have been going down. So while we talk about Article 34, 35, and uhuru wa vyombo vya habari na sijui na nini, but the ground is obviously hostile to journalists. Trends are being marked away from, for example, Kanu days when the main perpetrator was government office, as it were. Currently, the latest trends are showing the biggest threats to journalists are journalists themselves, editors, media owners, then obviously political activists, criminal gangs. National government is coming a distant seventh. In fact, county governments are ranking higher in terms of harassment of journalists. So those are trends that we need to take note of. While we have those articles we mentioned to be very progressive, we have nearly 21 laws in Kenya that then negate the 3 articles we mention every day. So when you talk about Article 33, 34, 35, those are just 3 articles in the Constitution, but we still have 21 other statutes that negate all that. So you talk about Books and Newspaper Act 1972. It says for you to start a newspaper in Kenya, you know what you have to go through. So those are some of our way, but we are seeing very practical, and I will invite our colleagues, like we informally talked, not to lament, because the statistics are there. We have, Article 19 has statistics, Media Council, Kenya Media Sector. We have statistics on what is happening. Amwik has done wonderful. KUJ has run a project on safety. So the statistics are there, and the general trend is that the working environment for journalists in Kenya is going down tremendously. Looked at the 360 approach. Psychologically, for example, the journalists who covered the Mwingi, the Kitui accident, who cares about them? The trauma they are going through. The journalists who covered Baragoi and other killings, who cares about them? So we have a lot of journalists who are moving time bombs. People talk on the streets alone because of the pressure that comes with work. And you work hard, but no pay. And with now COVID-19 related challenges, our colleagues, it's not easy. Then obviously physical safety issues around attacks, harassment, closure of media houses, digital safety, trawling online, harassment of journalists, especially women online. Those are trends that are being marked. People have their phones being tapped by national state intelligence or criminal gangs and others. So these are the general statistics. So quickly, I'll not go, my panel has very eminent practical people. Obviously, Judy Kaberia, you know her. She is the executive director of Amwick. And obviously, you know, she's an award-winning journalist. Robert Wanzara at Article 19 Eastern Africa, again, has worked in safety and protection of journalists for quite some time in East Africa. So as you talk about the trends, give us what is happening in Rwanda, Uganda, Tanzania, Ethiopia. It also helps people to contextualize when we are talking about some of these things. SG mwenyewe, the heir apparent to the court to Secretary General. So very soon, SG will be taking over. So SG, Secretary General, Kenya Union of Journalists, Eric has again, he also serves on the International Federation of Journalists. Again, as we talk about Kenya, help us also in African context. What are some of the trends we are seeing so that then we do a comparison and people understand what we are talking about. Then Terry Nzau is a senior editor at Mbaitu, but he's also involved in other many journalist issues. Tomorrow he's hosting us in Kajiado. He's the Secretary General of Scribes 254, so tomorrow we'll be eating. She will be hosting us. So you also talk about safety of journalists when they are eating and drinking. So I have a very good panel. So without wasting any more time, colleagues, and we had this discussion. Small intro, what are your thoughts in terms of trends, lessons, and where are we going as your first take at this? So Judy, please.
This is a very important subject, of course, considering that we are looking at an election next year, and based on what the Media Council of Kenya has said, over 60% of the journalists will be covering the next election are journalists who never covered the election before. And what should be disturbing us is those journalists, those of us who covered 2007, 2013, 2017, have we played our part in empowering the new journalists to know what to observe, especially when you talk about matters of security? Because we are going to an era where you go, just because of the media house that you work for, you're already exposed. You know, some of the media houses have already taken stands. They have made political stands. And I'm really happy that I sat in the committee that was working on the election reporting guidelines. And one of the things that I'm really happy, and some of the things that we're really pushing, is about the responsibility of the media house, the responsibility of the editor, the responsibility of the journalist, the political party, IBC, in terms of protecting the journalists. And one of the things that we really have to ensure that we've implemented, especially, is the safety that is employed, especially for female journalists. We know that they face unique challenges because of their gender. But one of the things that we want to say is that a female journalist should not be told, don't go cover a rally because you are a woman. No, we are saying, show up, go cover that rally. All we want from you is for you to take care of yourself. First, it starts with you. Secondly, the media house has to come up with ways. For example, if you're sending a female journalist to a political rally, can you send them, for example, with another, maybe a male videographer? Because in real life cases, scenarios, those of us who have covered rallies, you know what happens. You sit in between the dais and the masses. And as you hold your microphone or talk, you're being pinched, you know, the butt, the bust. All those things really happen. It is so true. So at the same time, it's up to you to decide, can I go alone or should I go with somebody? Do I need to wear, you know, a T-shirt written press or, you know, those things that Wida has been gifting us? Do you need to wear them at that particular point? Do you, for example, need to remove them the label? So I think as we go and talk about our safety starts with us, but either way, violence, there's increased attacks on journalists. Even doing a simple story about pollution, you just find yourself into deep problems. So it is true, threats against journalists have increased. And one of the researches we've done at Amwick is online violence, especially against female journalists. Whether it's body shaming, whether it's insulting or anything, we've seen a new way of leveraging on the online platform to attack female journalists.
Thanks, Judy, and colleagues take note. Because this is your discussion, you will be asking questions. SG.
Thank you, Biwaya. Number one, I will say that the trend, looking at the trend, I think as a country, I think we are not in good standing at the moment because there's a lot of questions that are being asked about Kenya. Some of the things that we are seeing in Kenya, they are only happening in other countries like South Sudan, Somalia, Burundi. But right now, people are asking so many questions about Kenya. Like Victor had said, we happen to be affiliated to so many international organizations. And I think every week I receive emails from these organizations just asking me to to put to perspective some of the things that are happening in Kenya. And they're concerned that some of the cases that have been reported, nobody seems to have answers. I think the latest one was that I was asked about Betty Barasa. People want to know that what happened. Was her death connected to her work as a journalist or as someone who was working in the media? Nobody seems to have those answers. There is this case of Gatonye, which to me, as you look at it, it also points to some work that he was doing. But again, nobody seems to have those answers. There was this colleague who died recently also, who was a cartoonist with Standard. Again, people ask, what happened? Because he was found dead in his house. Was it connected with with his work as a cartoonist, or it was just something different? So that means that as journalists, number one, if you look at some of the, like the death of Gatonye and the Standard cartoonist, it also points about our lifestyle. Guys, we have to be very careful about our lifestyle as journalists, because some of these things that will happen, if you look at some of these things, the way they happen, we only happen to know maybe at weeks or some days after they happen. So we need to learn as journalists, and we usually train that as a journalist, always keep communicating with your colleagues, be in constant communication, even if it's a joke. And we usually say with Victor that some of these WhatsApp groups that we are members, sometimes just say hi. At least that also makes us believe and also be assured that at least you are doing okay. But if you keep to yourself, you lock yourself in a room, nobody knows what is going on in your life, I think those are some of the gaps that we've seen recently. Going to elections next year, again, people are asking questions, because right now I know journalists are profiled by political parties. That has never happened before. When we are covering elections, maybe in 2017, 2013, 2007, at that time the profiling was not as high as it is right now. And politicians will tell you right now they know who is supposed to cover UDA and who should not cover UDA. So that means that if they've already been profiled and you find yourself in a ODM or in a Asimio, ya Umoja, and you're not supposed to be a member of Asimio, obviously there will be issues. Our newsrooms have already been infiltrated by politicians. Right now, I think it's 9 minutes past midday. Politicians already know how our running order are for the next bulletin at 1. They already know who has done what story and who is doing which story and who is following which story. Politicians already know. So you can look at the level of infiltration in our newsroom. So that actually exposes you as a journalist. So if you go out there, and I know for probably if I was to call a press conference in another 30 minutes, and already I know that your first assignment was a story that is actually hitting me as a politician, obviously I'll not be happy with you if I see you in my press conference. So those are some of the new trends that we've seen being developed by politicians and the strategies on how to run and manage the media. Nowadays, it is a fact, and we will not lie that nowadays politicians are writing our headlines in newsrooms, especially for newspapers. By around 3, when we go for the planning meetings, and we already know which is going to be a page 1 story, sometime nowadays even the politicians even get the screenshot of a newspaper, how the newspaper will look like the following day. As much as we may think that we are working for that politician, because obviously, like Mukwanja said, you're exchanging that notebook and pen for brown envelope. But one thing I know, that because I'm also a politician, and one thing I know, there is no permanent friendship between me and you as a politician. It's all about interest. Politics is all about the game of interest. So as much as you want to please me as a politician by sending me the screenshots of page 1 stories before they go to press, and I know from a politician I'll read this story has been written by Eric Oduor, the following day I'll have a problem with you.
So Terry, who is senior editor in a media house. Tell us how you are dealing with these malls and the threats from internal, as we also look at the bigger environment.
Thank you so much, Victor, and all those in this room. A lot has been said, and we all concur that violence against journalists, it's a global issue. It's not happening only in Kenya, it's happening everywhere. You remember the story of the BBC journalist who was found dead in a Nairobi hotel. Also, we are looking at answers and to whether her death is anyway linked to the kind of work she was doing. And like Eric highlighted, you remember we have a former journalist, Catherine Wambua, at the NLC, Betty Baraza, we have Gatonye, and more so others. So there are different forms of attacks that we journalists face. They take different shapes and forms in terms of intimidation, threats against rape, and others have even been raped, and sexual harassment. And this is even starting inside our newsrooms. We've had cases of our journalist interns being sexually harassed inside our newsrooms by either our male bosses, supervisors, and co-workers. And like I said, now it's taking a new form, even because the male journalists are being harassed, sexually harassed inside our newsrooms. We can't say it is a male issue alone, because also when it is affecting our males, it means it's coming from our counterparts who are women. And like we said yesterday, we should leave no one behind. Whether you are a female or you're a male, violence against journalists is something that we should talk about, and we should report. Most of these cases, Victor, never reported. And I'm happy that JHR, AMWIC, and other organization stakeholders have come up with a sexual harassment policy to make sure that we guard this thing and we put to an end to it. But more so, there is something I would say it's the new disease in town or in Kenya, the online harassment, trolling of journalists, and especially the female ones. As much as we see even the male journalists have been trolled, it's triple for us female journalists. Either because of your gender, either because of your sexuality or your appearance. And I would give an example with the issue of Yvonne Okwara. You remember there's a time she was trolled on Twitter just because she's married, she doesn't have kids. All that is being brought into the social media. We've seen Kanzedena also being trolled just because she's gone to maternity, she's come, she's different, just appearance. She's being trolled because of that. So I would say, as much as all this is happening, and Mweshimiwa, there's a Mweshimiwa yesterday, I think it is Betty, the one from Kitui, who said female politicians, and I will put even female journalists there, when you attack them because of their gender, because of their appearance, they tend to hide. And that's why you find we are having even few journalists who are female covering politics. Because either they are raped, they are threatened to be raped, even their families are dragged into this. And no woman would love her family when they are dragged into all this. The other issue is about the marginalized communities, and especially talking on a point of being journalists covering or broadcasting in the vernacular language. We experience high levels of discrimination. Culture comes in, stigmatization, all this. And it's bad if a politician is owning that radio station or TV station. And I would give an example with where I work, owned by Charity Ngilu. Kalonzo has his own called Adhiani, and we have others like former Wiper chairman, David Musila, County FM. So you'll find a politician will bring a story, but atakwambia, hii story najua yezi enda kwa Ngilu. mbona isiende? I'm a journalist, I'm supposed to be objective, I'm supposed to be fair. So I think these are some of the things. And even there's a story we covered about former Senator Mudhama in Tala. There's a time he was booed in his hometown. When we covered this story, he even threatened our journalist not to ever appear in his functions. And he went on record in another radio station saying he doesn't want to see Mbaito FM anywhere. So these are some of the intimidations, some of the issues we journalists face. And I think coming into this forum, we should speak candidly. We are headed to an election. It is a transition election. Most of our journalists in these newsrooms are young. They don't have that experience. Those who covered 2002 elections, a few of them are in our newsrooms. I never covered. So I would want more knowledge, and I thank God Media Council is here and other partners. We train our journalists on how to cover transition elections and some of the things that they will be undergoing. Otherwise, if we don't have this partnership, it's a lurking danger.
Interventions around online protection and training AMWIC has been doing, as we task Terry about in-house editorial planning plus now the external trainings. What are we doing? But as I go to Robert, what is happening in Kenya that has that doesn't make us unique? Because it seems some of these things are recurring, Tanzania, Uganda, and you working in a regional environment. What are some of the things you have seen, trends that you would want to share, and what are the lessons for us in Kenya?
Thank you so much, Victor. I think one of the critical question that comes up every time that we're talking about safety and security of journalists is the idea that during election, even in Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, there is a trend that is always unique in terms of how the politicians, get excited to wanting to manipulate, to control the media, and that places journalists at the center of everything that is happening. So I think one of the key issues that we are observing right now, even in Kenya, is that the spike in attacks against journalists is basically because politicians are actively, seeking favors. They want to now, they have become angels, certainly, that they've been doing a lot of great things. So they want journalists to be out there to, to speak about some of the things that they have, done. And that places, an additional burden on journalists to wanting, to balance between this pressure from the politician, but also what my colleague is mentioning about, objectivity. The other thing that, we're also observing is that, candidates, have money, and we all know that, journalists, sometimes we're not paid well. And so with that alone is already, an indicator that we're likely to have, alignment, of journalists, wanting to write certain things that favors journalists, and that places them at the center of, risk, because there will be a question of, how do we, trust some of the content that is being churned by these politicians. The other basic thing that we're also going to, we're observing is that the pressure for scoops, people wanting, exclusive stories that are likely to, wanting to isolate themselves to do stories that are not necessarily from, all. But for me, I think the critical part that I'm observing also in other countries, the media ownership. And we can actually, say that that is one of the issues that we see a trend in terms of attacks going to increase, because even as we speak right now, in the morning I observed something on Citizen TV that I thought this is one of the things that we need to speak about. That, supporters of politicians are now, identifying journalists and writing placards. I saw Stephen Lato's, placard, someone praising him, and that is very dangerous, because I'm very sure Stephen Ledo can't do a Ruto story. So that is one of the things that perhaps we need to also start thinking critically. How do we address that? Is it time that, media houses take positions? But how does that, work with the journalists that, and also the community media stations, both in our country and other places, is that, some of these, because of the ownership issue, some of journalists will be doubling up as, political agents of some of these, and that is very dangerous because then it leaves you vulnerable in terms of, what is likely to happen. But the other part that I also wanted to speak about is the pressure from the community. We've already, seen what is happening in the country. We've known, if you are coming from UDA, you are likely to be aligned to, if you're coming from ODM and others, you're likely to be aligned to a specific community. And what does that, do to you as a journalist? So I think those are some of the critical things that perhaps will inform some of our conversation here, even as we, beginning to, looking at what exactly can we do, what strategies can we employ to help us, minimize some of these risks that will come during this election.
Maybe in one of your remarks to talk about BNP's digital online, because again, our countries read from the same script. Given that Facebook, the Tanzania government at one stage banned online during elections, Uganda did it, Ethiopia did it. What is likely to happen in Kenya just around when elections are about to be released again? How do we look at alternative ways of sharing information that we saw in other countries happening? Because we will see it and it will happen here. It's coming. So with that, then I want to listen to comments. Be specific to any of the panelists. If you're asking a specific question or comment, then we see how they respond. Make your question brief and
Victor,
to the point.
Let me just say something.
Yeah, sure.
I think when we ask, I think it's very good for us to ask, we as the journalists, as the media, what are the causative factors that have led to increased attacks on the journalists now? Why now? And we've seen the biggest threat to the media is not even the government. And I keep on saying the end of journalism in Kenya is going to be by the journalists themselves. And you have to be very bold about this. Terry has mentioned it, but we need to ask ourselves, how comes we are so vulnerable compared to when we started journalism? And one of the biggest challenges that we have in this country, we have to speak the truth. When you go around asking the people what is wrong with us, especially the sources, they say corruption in the media is a cancer that we have to fight. If you're a journalist, and let's say today you're a journalist and you're attacked by a politician, will the masses stand to defend you? Or they will help to attack you? Then what has changed? Then we have to really critique ourselves and ask, what have we failed to do as the journalists, as the media houses? And one of the things that also we need to talk about is basically, are we united? When one journalist is attacked, do we unite? Do we see a frontline headline on the newspaper saying this journalist has been attacked? Do we sit down to call a press conference? We are not united. And this is why these attacks will continue to take place. It's like a competition. It's an NTV journalist who has been attacked. Oh, KTN has no business reporting. It's KTN journalist who has been attacked. Oh, Capital FM has no business talking about it. Until we as the media come and talk in one voice, then people start respecting us. They've already read our weaknesses. They know our weakness, corruption. Our weakness, we don't work together. We don't work together. Thirdly, we are not being professional. We are there making public statements of which parties we support, And one of the things that I'm happy we've pointed out at the media guidelines is for the media houses that decide to take a political stand, that they must protect their journalists because they're more exposed. And like now what Robert is saying, just imagine what is going to happen to Stephen Leto. You get to a rally, you find the masses have your name praising you. What happens when you go to Ruto's rally tomorrow?
Good. Thank you for your closing remarks, but we haven't reached there. So I was worried we were giving your closing remarks when we were just starting. Thank you, Judy. Quickly, brevity. We are professional here. Mambo ya mwenye vile alisema na wewe urudie the same thing to avoid. Just ask a simple, straightforward question or comment, then we move on. Nani? When you move with the microphone, you look at who is directing. Sawa, Linda, go ahead.
Yeah, my question is with regard to, this talk about physical safety. And SG, as the person charged with journalists' welfare, what have you done, or have you engaged other stakeholders to ensure that as we go to next year's elections, the journalists, let's say they have the appropriate gear, when they go to cover these elections? Is it when maybe members of a media house come to your office to complain that they don't have this gear, is it something you take up, or you just say your safety is in your own hands? Thank you.
Thanks,
Mine will be very quick, and it's just a comment first. There is the issue that, Victor, that you refer to mental health. That is at a very exposure to all those adverse things. Then the other part of it that is also called financial kind of well-being, and Robert has alluded to it. And all these in physical things. But I just want to say that the measures that the agencies like the media stakeholders like the MCK, JHR, the AMWIC have done, I think that we should strengthen them in terms of support for journalists who are out there financially vulnerable, mentally disturbed because of the exposures. I think we need to do more of that of mentorship and training so that we also give them support. Two, this is a question that goes to all of you. We have already been classified that we are pro this, pro that. From where you sit, as most of you are in the newsrooms, what are you going to do? How do we navigate this thing? That we are now where we have certain media houses where, because of their ownership, they've declared there's a certain line. This is where we're going to support. That ownership versus, even because even the reporters, the people there are able to check our social media and our comments and know what we are doing. That professional thing that has, because this, as we go into the next election, is going to be very, very, very difficult. Thank you.
And Terry, I want you to talk about social media professional and media house as an editor. The social media policy, do you have anything? Are you guiding your colleagues on how they use the social media space? My brother there, then Leo, then
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to comment on the aspect of journalists being, enemies among themselves. And I think for these, you find that a number of journalists work now at the county level. Some of them went and became like communication officers. But now you find that it's very, very difficult for other journalists to even access information because watakwambia either wanajua and all that. So I think it's important for journalists to protect themselves and protect each other. And then the other comment is on the aspect of safety of journalists at the county level. Because it's worse. In county, I can mention, for example, in Migori County, where there's a group of people, they call themselves Sangwenya. And these people are so powerful, they're just young people and they can intimidate. They are more feared than even, some of the CECs or directors, and they can intimidate. So these also, they do intimidate journalists. So I think, I don't know how, even as we go towards the election, the general election, I think it is very, very important to engage even either through the Council of Governors, or how can we really engage to ensure that journalists are really protected as we go to the general election, especially at the county level, because this is going to be is a time bomb that if you're not careful, then as we go toward the general election, then a number of journalists are going to face a lot of challenges. Thank you.
Thank you. And when you are responding, maybe under the national safety mechanism, thinking Homa Bay, Magwagwa's followers, Kidero's followers, and the lady governor aspirant. Wanga is bad. In Homa Bay, it's going to be tough. Leo and my sister, and then we'll come back here. I needed also the plenary to talk. Sometimes we talk to ourselves as panelists, and then we just go home.
Thank you so much. this is the season of elections. In the influencing and blogging sector, this is the season to make money. This is a season to hang around the politicians and make a killing. Is it the same for journalists, and how does that portend in terms of safety? Look, Syokimau FM, she mentioned Syokimau FM. For the last nearly 6 months has been running with only one person playing music in studio. Maybe from now, next year, you're going to have them hiring journalists. You know, how is that going to portend? How, you know, the idea that you'll be paid well for a period of another 6 months to join Syokimau FM, to be used probably by a politician. And then maybe after 6 months down the line, you've only been paid a salary of 3 months. How is that going to work? That season, how do we deal with that as journalists? Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. My name is Dr. Juliet Kememia. I'm a politician, so I've been hearing. I'm running for governor, Kiambu County. I have just 3 or so comments about journalists, particularly in this season. I have an experience in Kiambu of a journalist who is in court right now because he's accused of defaming. And the defamation is just giving the story as it is. But because now the governor has a lot of money, he has taken him to court. So how do you deal with shifting definitions of what defamation is? How do you draw that line? And then how do you synergize, you journalists, among yourselves so that you protect one of your own when they are exposed to that kind of intimidation just because somebody has money and doesn't want the fact to be reported? Then there is also, like, right now, the very popular shows, morning TV shows and radio shows. I have been trying very much to get to, like, Kameme. And every time, you know, but goja kidogo, then I see my opponents frequent. You can even say that they are presenters themselves. So there's a bird that whispered to me that the minimum is 100K. So me, I can't afford. I don't even have any money to campaign. When will we ever get a level playing ground? And how do you protect the new faces, the new entrants? How do you make it easy to penetrate so that we are covered and we are able to at least articulate our issues and offer the community alternative leadership? The other one is about paying for air. I can give an example. The day before yesterday, I get crashed Baba's meeting with Mount Kenya Foundation at Safari Park. And they were the journalists there were very clear. They are only talking to the who is who. So I went and stood behind the governor of Nyandarua. And as soon as he finished, I told them, "You're not interviewing me." So I made a lot of noise. I shouted. I said, "You have talked to a sitting governor, talk to an aspiring governor." And that gave them, you know, like I threatened them or I created an intimidating presence. I was able to be interviewed. Immediately, they were all over, running to me. "Hey, toa kitu. Hii editor wetu atataka." Well, nilimwambia kwanza, I can't, first of all, because you have a right to air or not. Number 2, nikamwambia mi hata editors wenu ninawajua. So stop bringing the name of the stop bringing the name of the editor. But that is what they do. That is what they do. They will tell you, sasa unajua stories ziko mingi and you want to be aired. Toa yangu na editor wangu. So how do you protect your editors also from being presented as corrupt people, that they can only be paid to air or to publish? Thank you.
Hello, my name is Tabitha Njambi from Ruben FM. We keep on talking about the freedom of press ama uhuru wa wanahabari, but kuna baadhi ya televisheni ambazo tumeona kuna yule mwanasiasa ambaye wanapea kipaumbele. So what do we do as journalists when the media house or the outlet wants us to support a certain aspirant? And again, as a journalist, for example, nafanya program ya asubuhi, the breakfast show, am I allowed to clearly state the aspirant that I'm for? For example, kama mimi ni nataka kusupport huyu wa Azimio la Umoja or the UDA, am I allowed to clearly keep on discussing about this is the one I want, this is not the one I want? For example, kama msikilizaji amepiga simu and then they are for UDA and for ODM, naka kumwattack. Is that allowed?
Okay, sorry, this mine will have nothing to do with the journalists and the attacks and violence. I'm speaking to the Mheshimiwa. I'll call you Mheshimiwa because in Jesus' name you're the governor. I'm happy when women lead. Eh? Oh, Her Excellency. Anyway, I just wanted to find out from you because the other day we also had a forum where we were talking to female politicians and how they engage the media. I run a page every month, and maybe I want to make it even more regular now going forward, where I cover female aspirants. We started in August. And we even, in fact, Nation even had a cover of female governor aspirants. Okay, thank you. I'm glad you're featured. So I just wanted to find out which media houses have you been, which doors have you been knocking? Because we also have aspirants who just believe that if I'm not seen on Citizen TV, then there's no other media. I don't want to be seen in any other media house because hizo zingine ni ndogondogo, you know? Those community small media houses are very important. But please also knock at the doors of Nation again. I'll give you an opportunity to tell your story as you. And nobody will ask you for even a 5 cents because we don't ask for the 5 cents. Our desk or our work is to ensure that women are visible because we want more of you in leadership. Karibu.
Thank you. Mimi labda swali langu nitauliza baraza la wanahabari na vile vile KUG. Labda mmeweka mikakati gani nyinyi kama baraza na shirika kuhakikisha kwamba wanahabari wanatekeleza jukumu lao kikamilifu bila kutaka hongo? Kwa sababu sasa hivi ukiangalia katika kule kaunti ya Taita Taveta, waandishi wengi wa habari hawafanyi kazi kama hawajapewa pesa. So sijui nyinyi mtalihandle vipi swala hili, kwa sababu unakuta kwamba mpaka viongozi wamejua kwamba hawezi kufanya kazi bila kulipwa. Asante.
Na gavana mtarajiwa ni mwandishi wa habari Taita Taveta. Kwa hivyo tutaona vile tutajili na hapo. Asante. Thank you. So colleagues, pick 2, 3 and be specific with your answer.
Thank you so much. Leo asked about something to do with Syokimau FM. Unfortunately, it is our baby sister station. And issues to deal with management of radio stations. I think it was the reason 3 people were left there. But headed to elections, it is true. In fact, even after the Media Council intervention, now we have 8, not 3. And I believe we are going to see this even with the upcoming elections because it is a station owned by the governor. The governor also is an aspiring candidate in that election. The other issue was asked by Ken Bosire about mental health and how media houses are prepared. I'll say mostly we are doing like less than 10% on issues to do with mental health, addressing mental health among journalists. There are no formal policies and protocols to protect our employees. And you will attest this even with when someone is abused online. there are no access to support, psychological and legal support, because I believe if a certain journalist has been attacked online and you can follow the people who are attacking that person, you can sue them. We have not seen any person being sued by any media house regarding that. And we have not seen even mentorship programs for those who have been attacked, at least to undergo and to know when this attack happens, what should I do? Social media policy, we don't have any social media policy. And I don't think whether there is any media house with a social media policy. They have nation standards, but mostly, are we following what is inside that social media policy? Shida iko hapo. Influence into media houses. I've found myself severally in this. My boss is a politician. There are people she does not like, there are people she likes. And she's declared support openly. So even it becomes hard at times to cover, and I will be open, because there's nothing to fear. My boss has declared support to Azimio la Umoja, to Raila Odinga, and severally you've heard her say she's not supporting Ruto, and she would switch off her TV station. So imagine I Austin Ruto in her station. So at times unajipata kwenye njia panda. You can also not bite a hand that is feeding you, remembering what he said with the kind of salary journalists are getting. The other issue, the last issue, is about journalists being the enemies of each other. And I would want to come back to that issue I mentioned about former Senator Mudhama. When that issue happened, he forwarded me a screenshot of his conversation with a particular journalist who was inciting this other journalist to the senator. And also this also comes to issues with going back to media houses. Remember in 2013, issue ya Joshua Sang. At times we are left on our own. Even if a politician will force you not to follow the media guidelines, you're supposed to know kikiumana you are on your own.
I just wanted to respond to a question by my sister. I didn't get her name. And the basic thing that, we always aware is that, as journalists, and I will pose a question to all of us. When we walked into this room, I don't know whether we are conscious enough to say that, our security starts with us. Because sometimes we're quick to say, our lives are in danger, but the basic things that we're supposed to be doing to protect ourselves or to minimize those risks, we don't do them. So, for example, all of us who are having their laptops open, I don't know if you know that someone could be looking at what you're doing. You don't need someone to actually tell you that you need to be aware that people could be snooping around to see what you're doing. You just need to be able to always prioritize that my security is the first priority. And I always tell journalists that when you are sent out by an editor without properly being instructed on safety and security, you just have to blame yourself. One is because we are going to make it a compulsory that any editor who sends out a journalist in the field without properly giving them security protocols, they will be liable if something happens to that journalist. So that we all start beginning to be responsible enough that while as a journalist, I'm responsible for my own security, but the editor who sends me out in the field also has a responsibility to brief me enough on what is going to be happening. So I think that is one of the area that I just wanted to share, and as SG responds, that let us primarily take the responsibility of safety of ourselves. Let us not assume that because you're working for a big organization, so I'm secure. Because she's mentioning that when these things happen, chances are that you'll be left by yourself. The media house will be looking at the bottom, line, and they will not be bothering you. I mean, wanting to take a burden of, trying to move you around and trying to look for safety houses and all that. So I think that is very critical. The other thing that I wanted to also to comment on is that, so we also need to start thinking, because the question of taking bribes or taking, it's a moral thing. It's an ethical thing that we need to start thinking about it, because you will take that 1,000 shillings, but then you're working with someone who is only for a short term end game. Your career is at the stake here. You want to take the 50 bob or 100 shillings, and then you destroy your own career because that is what you think is going to be. So I always insist that journalists need to start, inculcating this, virtue of, avoiding to do what is wrong and bad. Just, commit yourself to doing what is right, because that is what is ethical, I think.
Thank you so much, BY. Thank you so much, BY. But at least sometimes it's good to take time to discuss these issues. Because if you look at the program, we've been discussing the interest of others, but at least this session is specifically discussing the interest of journalists. So you'll allow us, even if it's 5 minutes, so at least we conclusively discuss some of these issues. So I'll start with the number one, which is called, which came from Linda, about the welfare of journalists. I think there is something that we're not doing right as journalists, because number one, it is assumed out there that KUJ, MCK, Amwik, and KEG, we are the employers of journalists, so that when a journalist is in problem, they run to us first. Yet the law is very clear, occupational health and safety, which gives this responsibility to the employer. Situation whereby we are taking employers accountable for some of these things, because the law is there. But when a journalist has been attacked from Mombasa, for example, whom do they call first? It's KUJ, KEG, MCK, Amwik, isn't it? So that means we are shifting responsibilities and the blame to the organization. As much as we are supposed to be working towards that, we expect the employers to do that. And I think there's some of the gains that and Linda, what you're saying, we require that employers provide the safety gears to journalists. That is a responsibility that is given by the law. As a union, what we are supposed to do is to ensure that we push the employers to provide this. And I can assure you and confirm that in our collective bargaining agreements with different employers, I've seen actually all of them, the employers that we have, and especially the major media houses, they have these safety gears. And also, they have the personal insurance cover for their journalists. So in the event that you are injured, I think you are compensated. At least there is even one which we signed last year, which is death in service also. So that if you are also covered by that employer through insurance, there's a policy on that, so that if an employee dies while in service, there is some compensation that goes to your family, not the usual one we usually do through the WhatsApp groups. So I think those are some of the achievements that I can say that the union has actually achieved over the past few years. However, we're having a problem with mushrooming radio stations, whereby there are no HR policies, there are no benefits for journalists. Unaambiwa, the recorder that you have and the notebook and the pen, those are supposed to feed you when you go out there. And that is why aspiring Her Excellency was saying that once she had addressed these people, they followed her and they needed something. Because, and if you follow up very well, you'll find that these, especially the FM stations that do not take in consideration the welfare of their journalists. That's where the conversation would be. And I'm hoping that in future, when we're organizing these conferences, let us always make sure that there's a media owner or somebody who is speaking for the employers is here, so that we can also address these issues. Otherwise, sometimes we give these responsibilities to organizations that can do very little about them. Leo talked about blog. Just before I wrap up, there are even a media house that actually has banned the employees from talking to me because they believe I'm a problem to them. They have touched some raw nerves there. And actually now they have told that you are not supposed to be seen talking to Eric or any function that has been organized by KUJ. So you can see how serious some of these issues are. Leo, you talked about the bloggers and the influencers. Unfortunately, these bloggers and influencers are journalists. And I know some of them are even in this room. All these politicians with the Twitter handle on Facebook pages, they do not manage or run those platforms. These platforms are run and managed by journalists. So nowadays, and it's a trend that journalists serve politicians first with information on their Twitter handles and their Facebook before they send news alert to the newsrooms. Then after doing that, they now feed international media with information first. So nowadays we say that journalists in our newsroom, actually newsroom are now side hustles. Those are the realities that we have. All these politicians, those Twitter handles are managed and updated by journalists. But right now, I can tell you that at Kasarani, all those Twitter handles and politicians are posting. They're done by journalists. So then we say, come here and say that, oh, you know, bloggers and influencers are the people who are putting a lot of unnecessary pressure on us. Yet, some of these things, like I started, the problem we're having in media right now is internal rather than external. So the earlier we accept that, the better for us. There's an issue about paying for content. Unfortunately, right now, our news bulletins, some of them are actually paid content. And even our newspapers, nowadays, we have got pages that are paid content. So now, even the media owners are now competing with journalists for content that is paid for. So very soon, maybe we will be faced out on brown envelopes, so we have to go back to the drawing board on how we are going to do some of these things. Because media owners have realized that nowadays, politicians are ready to pay for content than serving the public as the media is known. So we have seen that trend changing in newsrooms nowadays. Nowadays, instead of the expiring governor here, instead of giving a journalist 100,000 like you said, what you do, you go and do a supplement, a page. You'll be given a page by all these media houses. They'll give you a page and later you 100,000, then they brand it there, sponsored content. So what does that tell us? That even in our own media houses now, we've realized that people must pay for content. How we consume that is a different story. And M-Pesa is really tying up our guys. I was recently involved in a case whereby what they needed to do was to bring me an M-Pesa statement of that journalist and tell me now defend this. And these M-Pesas were coming from politicians. Then they do look at those, the days the M-Pesa was sent, the dates, and the stories that were published on those particular days. So that you can reconcile. So guys, the public already knows our price. So if we want to take position, yes. If we don't, it's up us to decide. And adding to that point, even the politicians and the consumers of our product know very well that specific media houses have taken a stand on a specific issue. So even if we lie here that, oh, you know, we are going to remain objective and impartial, but that's not the truth. The people we are serving know that we are lying to them. How can we change that perception and go back to the basics? Finishing, I will finish with the National Mechanism for Safety of Journalists and what we are going to do as we approach elections. There are different aspects and things that we are doing as the media stakeholders under Kenya Media Sector Working Group and also National Mechanism for Safety of Journalists, where we have got different things that we are doing. We have done so well when it comes to advocacy. And I was telling you, Biwaya, when we started that, there are even different organizations that now start questioning what we are doing in Kenya. They believe you are lying. Because we've done so much activities around advocacy, but when it comes to the results are zero, and that is why they believe that we are seeing so many deaths in Kenya. And I know that next year when we'll be having World Press Freedom Index report, I think our ranking is going to drop again. Why? Because of some of the cases they are seeing. They believe that probably we as Kenyan organizations, we are lying. There is something that we are not doing. So what are we doing? We'll have the advocacy, we'll continue. And I think, Terry, you said that you've not had a single case whereby some people have been prosecuted. I will confirm that, yes, people have been prosecuted and action taken. Next year, we are going to strengthen our legal aid support to journalists around elections so that any case that is brought out, we don't just make noise about it and issue statements, but at least to make sure that this matter is followed up to the prosecution and action taken against perpetrators of violence against journalists. So under national safety mechanism for safety of journalists, there are a lot of things that we are going to do next year, in addition to data collection, advocacy, and now we will also now ensure that we work with police and Director of Public Prosecutions, who are members of this team, to ensure that these cases are investigated and actually prosecuted in court, and journalists are helped, because most of the cases are actually lost at the statement-taking stage, whereby we do not take keen interest and also work with police. So I think one of the things that we'll be doing under legal support program, we'll be working with journalists to record statements that actually can stand test of time when these cases are prosecuted in court. So a lot of things will be happening around that to ensure that we also don't just make noise or advocacy, but at least there's some practical steps that will be taken to ensure that any politician or anybody who will try to raise his or her hand on a journalist, action will be taken and they will be prosecuted. Alongside that, we're also working with the IBC. You all know that we had a meeting with the IBC and even the Director of Public Prosecutions, where we agreed that during election time, we will ensure that electoral code of conduct is enforced. So any politician who will use violence against the media, we will be working also with IBC and Director of Public Prosecution to ensure that these politicians are prosecuted and also barred from participating in elections. So it's going to be differently, like the way we are going to handle some of these things under national mechanism for safety of journalists. So I think that's what I will sum it up there. But as journalists, I'll just repeat, let us be part of the solution solving, because if we are not part of it, sometimes these things happen, but we might not know unless they're brought to our attention. Like I've seen there's a case that has been mentioned here in Kiambu where there's a journalist who is facing defamation. I think if this matter is brought to our attention, we usually support. And like in this case, it's a matter that has to be fought in court. We will pay for the lawyer to defend this journalist in court. Again, sometimes you're our own enemy. I think there was a similar case that was in Tarakaniti, whereby the governor there sued a local newspaper there. And immediately we joined in the case as KUJ to support the paper that had been sued. We saw things changing. And when these things were changing, the governor was also using one of us in the media to ensure that these stories are not covered. You can see that, like I said, the problem is internal. The problem might not be external as we think, because probably these people have known our weaknesses and now they're working with us actually to fight ourselves. So I think I've tackled most of the issues that had been raised. Our sister in Taita Taveta, there is a problem. And I think we have to accept, and that's why I was saying that we need to sit and start having national conversations around this, and including with the CA and MCK. Because we might not know that there's a radio station. I don't know if any of us knew that there was a radio station in Tena that was closed the other day. And you'll find that there's a radio station that has got journalists who are working. And if these things are not brought to our attention, we might not be able to know. So we have to clean ourselves and ensure that we are able to serve the public as the public requires us. Oh yes, I'm being reminded here there was a question about journalists defaming journalists. Yes, it's a fact. And that's what I keep insisting, that our problems are more of internal than external. Yeah, because we are the people who are always, and you know, we belong to different WhatsApp groups here, and you can see how journalists are actually declaring supports for their for politicians and defaming their own colleagues for taking a different position based on the political groupings that we are having here. So, BY, I think we've got a lot of work to do in next year, that I think we should keep talking and see how we can address some of these things, because we are seeing different dimensions and trends emerging as we are approaching elections.
Thank you. And we need just to go, like you mentioned, SG, some tough action against ourselves. If somebody is corrupt, he was bribed, people saw in parliament, he's in a WhatsApp group, a journalist ran away with 300,000, he's known. What are the editors, what is that media house doing? What is the HR policy in that media house when your staff has been found to have, taken money and everybody knows evidence is there? What else? So we also need, like you said, to do internal work on ourselves. A journalist is defaming another journalist. What is done about such a person? Why are we lamenting? Why are we crying for external help when it is purely an internal matter? So again, these are tough things that we must accept to face. We know talk shows are not supposed to be paid for. This is news time, editorial content. I know almost all local-based stations charge people. Na watakuambia mheshimiwa hii wangekuchaji 1,100 kwa station lakini nipe tu 20 ukuje. Yet they know that money will not even be surrendered to the station. So even the station is not making any money. So this is just corruption. We know people come to the studio, you are unwell, wanaku interview, then you give out your number for people to donate. Then pesa kishafika limit, wanakuambia transfer pesa yako kwa one of the hosts, ndio pesa iendelee kuingia. Then the host disappear even with the money, somebody who is sick, you know. So these are things that we must deal with also internally as people. The morality, where is it, you know? So, executive director, award-winning journalists, your closing remarks.
Yeah, one of the things I asked was, what is making the threats against journalism in Kenya to increase? And you've identified it, it's corruption. No matter how we can't change it, it's corruption. This is why we are being threatened. And one of the things why cases are not even progressing, because if you are not clean, why would you want to stand in a court of law to be defended? And you know it will just take an M-Pesa statement for someone to discredit you as an illegal journalist. So it all goes back to integrity. And one of the things that I know is not going to solve this problem, it's not even about the payment of journalists. If we look at the people who are corrupt, some of them are people who are earning 300K plus. So it's not about journalists not earning money. And the one for not earning the money, the media policy process is ongoing, and one of the things that we are looking at is the sustainability and viability of the media. For example, do we license broadcast media that cannot hire and pay their staff members? So at least there's some that is taking progress in that, and I hope the media policy is going to address the issue of sustainability and viability as one of the interventions to addressing corruption, because some of them will say they don't have transport, they need facilitation, but what happens to the independence of the media if at all we have to provide transport for them? And about corruption again, it's a candid conversation that we must have, Victor. I think we must sit down and face that elephant in the room, the big elephant in the room. We have to sit down and have that candid conversation and call out the people who are corrupt, because the problem is we keep on washing it away. You go to do a training, the journalists to talk about integrity, they tell you, we sema tu kimaliza uende. You know? They're not interested because wanakuambia, tushatumwa na editor na amesema tumchukulie yake. So how are you supposed to train that journalist to have integrity? We talk about it. And it's two-way. If you're a politician, if you're a CSO, if you're an NGO, and you've created the culture of giving money to journalists, you're also promoting it. It's not one-sided. Everybody here has to take responsibility. Why are you giving money if you know your content is good? It is not good. That is why you are paying for it. If something has news, we'll cover the news. There's no way a journalist can refuse to cover something that is newsworthy. There's something that is making you to buy for space. Buying on space should be taken with a pinch of salt. It's not genuine. There's something wrong about it. So I think this is going to be a two-way, and it's a conversation that we must have as the sources, as the media, the editors. We call it what it is, because the truth is, in those boardrooms, a lot of corruption is happening. High level, low level, middle level corruption is happening, and that's where the problem is. If we don't address that, even when a politician slaps you, you just keep quiet because you're afraid you took money from him at some point. That's why we keep quiet. So we have to address that. That's the cancer that is eating the media. And if we don't do it, I said the end of journalism in Kenya is not going to be the law, but us, ourselves. And the other thing I wanted to talk about is training of journalists about digital safety. At the Association of Media Women in Kenya, we have a project, we are calling it The Stitch. It's sponsored by the Deutsche Welle Academy. And so far we've been trying to train young journalists, the ones who are coming, on how to stay safe online. What kind of images do you post on social media? You know, how are you dressed? What are you drinking? I'm not saying it should be the reason for you to be attacked, but we said it starts with you, personal initiative. Personally, have you done something to protect yourself before you ask for protection from somebody else? What are some of the things can you do to protect yourself? And this is not just for the journalists, even for female members of parliament. Always ask of what consequence is it if I post this photo? Of what consequence is it if I say I'm in this place and that place? So sometimes it begins with us. And under this project also, we are trying to show female journalists how they can utilize the digital space to benefit themselves, to grow their career progression, to make money. And also, sometimes, of course, it's not very easy for us to defend ourselves. Sometimes you can't defend. I've been a victim of online violence. Actually, I wanted to resign. I didn't go to work for 2 days. And I just wrote a story that the guy, Manono, was alive. The guy wasn't dead. But some political party held a moment of silence and the guy was dead. I got this guy from Kibera, I said he was alive. And for 2 days, I was called all the names. Actually, I felt like dying. It is really bad. There's no excuse for emotional effect of online violence. So through this project, we've been doing this training and we are in the process of developing a handbook on digital security. I hope we'll have a forum where we are able to launch it together with the stakeholders so that more journalists can benefit on how they can stay safe online.
And obviously, there will be massive training of journalists on safety and protection. There will be sensitization. A hotline has been, the Media Council runs a hotline. There's a safety fund. Obviously, a number of some of these issues, we never talk about them openly, but we keep journalists in safe houses. We have evacuated journalists from this country to other third countries because of their safety. We do story analysis, risk analysis before you embark on a story. We sit with you and do a risk analysis and see the implications of those stories. But obviously, such data can't be shared, obviously, because where safe houses are, where journalists are being kept. And also, a lot is happening to give journalists support. There's a program on investigative journalism that is coming back. But as we said, studies have been done. Journalism is the most dangerous job in the world, not just Kenya. Those are things those who want to practice journalism must notice. Journalism is not for the faint-hearted. Kama ni mtu ya kulialia kuanguka chini, tafuta kazi ingine, because some of us are coming to journalism for celeb, for what, without knowing what journalism is. We come to make names, but that's not journalism. So as we give you this support, what colleagues are talking about, it starts with you. What type of person of you? What life do you lead? What is your routine? What is your mental capacity? Thinking, association, do you care about yourself? Are you present in what you are doing? I mean, the number of journalists, when you look at how Francis Nyaruri was killed in Kisii, 2009, the first journalist in Kenya, you have done those analyses. You know what happened. Kitui in Eldoret, you know what happened. Marsha in Mombasa, he was poisoned. And some of these things you can see it. Yes, Wesonga was poisoned in Mombasa. He came from, from Mumias. And you can see, in fact, Wesonga was poisoned by a fellow journalist. And he died in this country. So there are personal lifestyles that we as journalists must also take. Who do you drink with? Who do you socialize with? What are some of the people you go out with? It becomes, look at how, for example, the late Kitui died. You can see trends among his friends, his colleagues. Francis Nyaruri. Most of them. Yes, Bosire, and quite a number of cases. You can see a link on what is happening. And the number of cases we are talking about, increasing cases. You see, even the Kakamega latest case in Kakamega is a journalist fixing another journalist. So if we don't stop being petty and think we are making names by fixing others, we will get you on Arambe Avenue walking, ukirusha mikono juu. You are traumatized. You feel guilty the rest of your life because you fixed or you killed a colleague. These are realities of life. Some of us worked in newsrooms when it was terrible. You wouldn't do a story, Ken Bosire can confirm, you wouldn't do a story on Raila Odinga when Ochieng Sin was alive. Edward Miringu, you will never do a story on Uhuru Kenyatta or Kibaki if Edward Miringu was in a newsroom. And others, we can count. We used to be physically beaten. In turn, unaandika kwa baba, who told you? Those are things, and they're already coming back. People are owning sources that you can't touch. And that's why you are seeing internally generated threats against journalists, because people are owning. And it's dangerous. But like we said, we are ready for it. Sio? Waandishi hapa ni wangapi? We are ready for it. Tutangangana. Lakini hatutaki ukufe. No story is worth your life. There's no story worth your life. You have a family, you have a life, we love you, we want your life. When you are dead, we will not read your story. Tutafanya na placards siku 2-3 kwa street, tunalia haki yetu, kesho tumekusahau. Hiyo page yenye iliandika ukikufa ndio inaandika advert ya kuandika mwingine na maisha inaendelea. So care about your life. Because at the end of the day, maisha ni yako. Si tumejaribu. Sasa kwa hayo mpigie panel yetu makofi kabisa. Wamemwaga hapa wisdom, knowledge, research, data, analysis, trends and whatever, na tunafurahi. Tukienda kula sasa tuko relax, waandishi wetu wako kwa safe hands, sio? Thank you colleagues and thank you panel. Oh, senior wanted to say something. You know when seniors talk, you must listen.
I think, thank you panel. You've, you've been very candid. I'm an editor, I've been an editor. I think we should have some one action point. That journalist who tells you my editor has sent money for me, please ask him to give you the name of the editor. We should start from there. Those are duty bearers. If your editor tells you, if Dorcas says, give me money, let that Dorcas be named. I've never sent a reporter out or anybody else waste the money. Let's begin by naming those editors who are sending out. Otherwise, it's just hogwash. They're using that as an excuse to keep the money. They lie. So that is the declaration we must take. If there is an editor who sends money, let's name them. But otherwise, those are just lies.
Media house owner, at media house owner ndiye amenizuia kuandika. Unamuuliza wewe Nation, ushaikutana na Gakani mwenye Nation? Unaanza kusema hakuna. Sasa wengine pia ni warongo tu, mjue iko lagai hii town. Thank you colleagues, and yes, I'm now releasing you. Sami, do something for the panel. Then obviously there's lunch that is coming. That's why I was telling you msikunywe chai mingi, kuna chakula lunch. So back to who? Back to studio. Back to studio. Studio hakuna.
Okay, let's appreciate this panel. We're going for lunch soon, so I'm sure there is more fuel waiting for us. Let's appreciate them once more. Mr. Bueva is still there on the podium. Thank you very much for this really engaging session that touches on the welfare of journalists. It's very important. This past 2 days, we've been speaking a lot about the role of the media, and it's also very important that we are able to end this session particularly focusing on journalist welfare, journalist safety. It's a two-sided of the coin, that while we require a lot from the journalists, it's also very important for us to focus on their welfare and their well-being. So I'd like to thank the panel once more for taking us through that very important conversation, which has now brought us to the end of our second and final panel for the day. And thank you all once more for having been with us since yesterday to today. We do appreciate your commitment. We do appreciate your, your contributions. So let's all give ourselves a big round of applause, please. We deserve it. We do deserve it. We've been here, we've contributed, we've shared experiences, we've suggested solutions. That is brilliant. Thank you. And at this point, let's also take some time to appreciate our technical team that have been with us for the past 2 days, ensuring that we are here and our voices are heard. We would also like to, at this point, acknowledge the support of the team at JHR, who have been here, well, even before yesterday. This conference, has been on the making for weeks and months, the planning. It might look simple here on the surface. We are all here, but I'm sure we all appreciate that a lot of work went into this. So for that, we would really like to appreciate the team at JHR, starting from our project manager, Sami Muraya. Let's give him a big round of applause. And our finance coordinator, who is Penina. I'm sure at this point we all have been interacting with Penina. Let's give a big round of applause to Penina. And a big thank you as well to our gender lead, who is Winnie Siumbua. I'm taking my time not to say Sumbua. It's Siumbua. So I didn't know the difference before, but I learned. So a big thanks to Winnie, who is our gender lead, who has been ensuring that whatever we do is really gender sensitive. At this point, we'd also like to take this opportunity to thank our guy in the middle, who has been ensuring that we all coordinated, who ensures that we actually, without him, actually, we will struggle with everything, because whatever we do, we say, where is Bernard? So at this point in time, please join me to appreciate and thank Bernard for the amazing work he's been doing, Bernard. Thank you. Bernard had to take a sip of water to just make sure that it's okay. Thank you, Bernard. And we've had a team of amazing volunteers. But before I get to the volunteers, at this point, I would also like to thank our colleague Opio, Mr. Opio Edwards, and Opio has been making sure that we move from place to place and ensuring that we are able to coordinate all of this work. Please join me to thank and appreciate Opio. And as I mentioned earlier, we have a team of really amazing volunteers that I cannot mention all their names, but I'm sure you've seen them around. But we'll have a moment to appreciate them properly later today, in the evening. Our team of volunteers have been around, and we do appreciate them, and I just want to mention that. But importantly as well, at this point, we've been working with partners. We cannot get this work done without our partners, and our partners have been the backbone of this project in Kenya. And I will start with these partners. One of them I can see in the room, which is the Association of Media Women in Kenya, and the Executive Director and her team are here with us, Ms. Judy Kabiria. Thank you very much. Our other partners, some of them are still in the room. They are not here, but we will still acknowledge them. We have the Kenyan Editors Guild. We've been working with KEG. We've been working with, let's give a big round of applause for KEG, please. We also have been working with the Kenyan Union of Journalists, led by Secretary General Eric Udwav, who was just here with us. A big round of applause for KEG. We also want to say a big thanks to our partners in the civil society, and you're all here since yesterday. You've joined us, and you've joined us again today. And our partners in civil society are quite many, so I won't be able to mention them name by name. But please, let's give a big round of applause for our civil society partners. And to the journalists who have made this whole project worthwhile. This project exists in its sense because of journalists. And it's because of the desire to build synergies between journalists, between civil society organizations, and government. So the journalists that are here, we've come a long way, but we still have a very long way to go with you. And we're looking forward to walk that journey with all the journalists that we've been working with. So a big round of applause to the journalists who celebrate you more tonight. Thank you very much, everyone that is here. We do appreciate you. And just in terms of the next steps for this conference, we've completed the first part of the conference, which is the conference itself. Tonight, we continue with an other part of the conference, which will be the Journalists for Human Rights annual Human Rights Media Conference Awards that will happen. It will be a night to acknowledge and celebrate excellence reporting in human rights, particularly on issues affecting women and girls. So we have the awards night. We have the awards night coming up, and we are really looking forward to it, and we hope you will all join us here tonight, starting at 6 p.m. We will have the awards event running probably between 6 to 9 p.m., and then we will continue to celebrate with an after party. So I hope you will all. I will hope you've done all the hard work yesterday and today, and you will also join us tonight to celebrate all the hard work that we've put in together. And then it will also be our Christmas party. Then we can see you the next year. But until then, let's break and take lunch. And if you want to hang around, Karibu, you're welcome. If you want to go home and come back later, karibu as well. And I see Her Excellency has given me a paper to read. It looks like Somi and Harambe. Governor in the making, Dr. Juliet Kimemia, has sent a number ready to be hosted anytime, anywhere, and any day. Oh, it's not actually an Harambe, but this is an Harambe you can contribute to. You can contribute to it by hosting her in your radio shows, hosting her in your TV shows, and doing features on newspaper with our aspirant, the Honorable Governor, Dr. Juliet Kimemia. Yes, so our phone number is 0722 7939 0722 7939 That's the contact of Dr. Juliet Kimemia. She's running for a gubernatorial position in Kiambu County. It's very big, and as we've emphasized in this conference, we must support women who are working hard to get into elective positions. So that's it for you. Contact her. And other thing is there is a bit of transport reimbursement for everyone, a modest transport reimbursement for everyone who has participated in this conference since yesterday. So please make it a point to get in touch with my colleague there in the Penina. Penina is there, she's waving. So please make sure you get in touch with Penina, and then you can collect reimbursement for, it's just a reimbursement for your expenses you've done to be here. So I think that's really the end of this event. We just to thank you and thank you again, and then looking forward. We're not done yet. We've been together again tonight, if you can make it. See you all tonight, and Asante-san, yes, Mercy has a, for Dr. Jemima. The contact for Dr. Jemima is 0722 793912. 0722 793912. I hope that helps and it's clear. That's the end of the first part of this annual Journalists for Human Rights Conference and Human Rights Conference and Awards. We'll see you tonight for the awards.